And you're very welcome along to Polling Station. It's Johnny Ward dialing in from Wandsworth, which is one of the constituencies that we may or may not discuss on today's show with Neil Channing, obviously William Kedjanyi and Paul Krishnamurty. And we have a packed show today looking at the local elections. I don't know, William, I just get the feeling, I had a beer with you last night. We did a bit of a tour of the local areas. I just get the feeling that there's going to be a low turnout at this election. Am I wrong?
Wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. I don't think it's going to be a massively high turnout election. I haven't seen anything as an indicator to suggest that we're going to get really high numbers. I think there's a lot of interest in it, but most of that interest seems to be, as is always the case with local elections, people taking, sort of their lessons or whatever from the results and applying it to hypothetical scenarios in the future. And I think it'll be fascinating on that score. But it's interesting because Ben Walker, who runs State of the Nation for the New Statesman, put out a tweet asking for any science campaigning, and there haven't really been that many. So wouldn't be terribly surprised.
Yeah, so if you visit the website, we have prices on loads and loads of things. And you may say the prices are a little bit tight, but there's almost certainly value there somewhere. And these things are hard to price up. And it's funny, Paul, looking at the Northern Ireland prices, the only price that people would probably be attracted to here is the 6-1 the DUP. But the DUP voters are anti-gambling, so they're not even going to back that themselves.
And they're not going to win. Surely 12 on Sinn Féin is an absolute money printing job, right? They're miles ahead.
Well, it probably is, and you could probably back that into a double with some of the prices that you might fancy in the British election, because in the local election, because I don't think they're related contingencies, even though they would be elsewhere, maybe double it up with Man City to win the league or something like that. But yeah, they are miles ahead, 1-12, and it'd be interesting to see how that develops, because they're polling in Ireland actually the other day, in the south of Ireland is the highest that it's ever been. How are you, Neil Channing?
I'm good. Yeah, I did actually. You don't get so many polls, do you, for the Northern Irish stuff? I did see one the other day where it looked like the Alliance were joint second now with the DUP. I don't know whether you saw that. I think they were both on 18.
Yeah, I think Alliance will do well, actually.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, I think generally with these local elections, I'm sure the turnout will be low. And I think I was reading one polling guy, I think it was the fellow from Opinion. He was saying that the London forecast for just the standard London poll probably overestimated the Labour turnout because the election's basically all about which kinds of people turn out, and it's basically older people turn out and younger people don't, and older people are more likely to vote Tory and younger people are more likely to vote Labour. So he reckoned you had to knock 7 points off whatever Labour are given in the polling for London, but that still made them virtually 20 points in front. So yeah, but when you go down and break it down, there aren't really that many councils that are going to change hands. And the other thing is, normally in these, when you get a local election, we always have these mayor elections now, and the interesting mayor elections that everyone likes to talk about are like Bristol, obviously London with Sadiq Khan, the West Midlands mayor. We don't really have any of those. Well, I can't remember. I think we've got South Yorkshire, where Labour are 100-1 on. Croydon are going to have a mayor now who's going to run their council, because basically the Labour council there went bankrupt. And there's one other one, I can't remember. Hackney. Yeah. Hackney are going to have a mayor where Luther Rama, who got banned from politics for 6 years, is allowed to stand again now, and he's basically in a coin flip against Labour. So that's not going to be a big headline, is it? Like, if Labour beat an independent to get the Hackney mayor, I don't think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Boris Johnson.
What's your general expectation, William? You've mentioned turnout. The Conservatives have to be fair in what's going to happen here across the country in terms of just the few months that they've had. Maybe Boris has had a bit of an uplift from Ukraine, but very little else. Now, the local elections as a kind of a barometer for the rest of the country might not be actually the most accurate. But what are you expecting?
I'm expecting a few Labour gains, a few Tory losses, some gains for the Greens in certain places, a few. If we do councils, so let's say we're looking at what will change hands when it comes to councils, even though Chris from Legal's Opinion earlier makes a very good point, I think we will see some decent gains for Labour in London. The best place to look for this might be electoral calculus, who had Labour gaining about 800 councillors and 20 councils. Again, how much stock you put in this is up to you. I think these are sort of notoriously far harder, I think, to put a real handle on than, say, general election predictions. But long story short, Labour will make some gains, the Tories will make some losses. I don't think they'll be as extreme as either, people looking to spin it in favour of Boris Johnson or not will suggest. And I think at the end, the Tories will be, I don't think there'll be a revolt against Johnson on these results. And I think Labour will be reasonably happy, but not, jumping for joy. I think that will be how it'll go.
What are you expecting turnout-wise, Paul?
Low, but I think it's differential, and I think this is the important point. Now, I've read repeatedly from activists around the country that the Tory vote just isn't going to turn out. And I think this is where the sort of interesting results might come. I don't really think London's interesting at all. I think that the London electorate flipped into a new kind of partisan divide after Brexit. And you're not going to see much change. I think Labour will take Barnet, but that's probably about it in London, maybe a few changes. But it's in the places like...
Don't forget Wandsworth. Don't forget...
I'm sceptical about Wandsworth. But I mean, how many times have we heard that before, that Labour are going to take Wandsworth, and they don't? Likewise, Westminster. So I don't think there will be that much change there. I think the more interesting thing is where we go to places where we would assume would be safe Tory, like Kent. Because the first point is that these are the places where the Tories overperformed in 2019, because a lot of people who maybe vote Lib Dem or in council elections or in polls split to Tory, stop Corbyn. Now they don't have that dynamic. You look at a place like Kent, it's beset by massive traffic, problems because of Brexit, cost of living, really bad down there, public transport really bad. And I think there'll be a reaction. And I think in those races where it's a Tory Lib Dem fight, it's the easiest opportunity for a mid-term protest vote, right? And I do think that the Tories are going to struggle to get that caught. Like, okay, we know that older people turn out at local elections, but if 1 in 10 older Tory voters decides to have a protest or stay at home, that will have a profound impact in a lot of seats. And that's where the pressure would come on Boris Johnson, where they, I do think they're very detached from reality at the moment, a lot of Conservatives, I really do. If they get a big wake-up call in a place like, for instance, Maidstone, I see Maidstone is in the betting, and I think 6-4, no overall control is probably a reasonable bet there. If they lose places like that, that will spark a reaction against Johnson, which then leads into these by-elections, which are all looking disastrous for them.
How bad is it going to be, do you think?
Sorry, was that for Paul or for me?
Just quickly. There is this poll out today, right, which says the Tories will lose 550. As I understand, it is rubbish. That is absolute rubbish. Right? Everyone's repeating it, because I've seen John Rawlings, the local election guru, saying 400 losses is the absolute max. So it's something like that. And really, the area where it would hurt the Tories is in particular areas that they are taking for granted. Somerset would be another one.
Okay, Neil, you can come in.
No, all I was going to say was, I think Paul's made some good points in terms of the numbers of seats. And I think lots of seats will definitely change hands. But I'm on a couple of WhatsApp groups locally with Labour activists in London. And, I hear people saying, people are disillusioned with the council. And obviously, it's local issues a lot of the time in London. It can be the low traffic neighbourhoods or bin collections or whatever. I hear people saying, but there are independents standing here and there. At the end of the day, it's really hard. It's actually really quite hard to win council seats you know, I sort of found it quite strange. My first experience of having anything to do with a local council election was here in Ealing, you know, probably 2 elections ago. And people were saying to me, oh yeah, we don't bother with Ealing Broadway, we can't win that. And I was just like, well, you only lost it by like 300 votes last time. That doesn't sound like very many. But it's amazing how hard it is to make up kind of more than 200 votes in a local council ward election when there's only maybe 1,200 people that are going to vote for you, and you've got to get that number up to 1,400 or 1,500 to win. That's really hard to do. So actually, you know, yeah, they, you know, and also I saw one of the sites that was talking about polling in London. I can't remember what it was now. I saw lots of people retweeting it though, and I looked at the Ealing ones just to see what it was. A load of nonsense. I mean, it was talking about, you know, gains for the Lib Dems in places where they're not even campaigning, and I just think there's quite a lot of it is quite localized, this stuff, and I think people don't always realize. I don't know. I was desperately trying to find some bets, actually. I had a good look at Sutton the other day. I read a big article that people were sending around saying that Sutton was potentially going to be a hard one for the Lib Dems to hold, that the Tories had a chance there. Sutton's quite a Levy area of London. It's quite white, older people. And they were basically saying that, you know, the Lib Dems have had the council for quite a long time, obviously throughout austerity. And the locals there are getting a bit fed up with the council. There's a bit of rumblings. But when you actually start drilling down and thinking, well, how are the Tories going to take it? How many votes do they need to win? They've got to win like sort of, you know, 8 5-1 chances to win it. And I looked at it, I thought it should be 50-1 on, not 5-1 on. I see it's gone in, I think it's 6-1 on now. I'd be amazed if the Lib Dems lose Sutton, especially at a time where the Lib Dems are doing quite well nationally relative to where they were 4 years ago. And the Tories are obviously doing, you know, well, actually in national polling, they're not really doing much different than they were 4 years ago, but they're obviously doing a lot worse than they were a year ago. So I don't know. I think I definitely don't agree with Paul on the fact that, you know, I'll take his point that he's saying, oh, the pressure can build from all of these little victories against them. But actually, I think generally the population at large don't really care that much about the local elections. The Tory MPs don't care about the local elections. They've long since accepted that running councils is a waste of time. I don't think this will have almost any effect on whether Boris Johnson stays as the leader of the Tory party.
What if the Tories get an absolute hiding, which isn't at all impossible?
Again, I don't know. I mean, first of all, I'm kind of with Paul. I think that I saw that story about losing 600 seats. Last week, people were trying to say they might lose 1,100 seats. It's almost impossible. There's not actually that many, you know, contestable seats up for grabs, really. And if you look in London, like, you know, of course, everyone was saying 4 years ago when Corbyn was in charge, oh, you know, Labour haven't done very well in these elections and it's been a disappointing result. Now they're telling us, well, of course, we can't do very well in London because 4 years ago we had such a great night. It just none of it makes any sense. I wish people would stop lying about what we can actually see if we look at the data. But I mean, I think it is quite hard for Labour to make a lot of ground in London simply because they're already doing really well in London. London is a Labour town now. Sadiq Khan, you know, he's been the mayor for quite a long time. He didn't do quite as well as people thought, you know, he didn't do as well as the polling last time round. And you can, I did spend a little bit of time sort of mapping individual areas against the Sadiq Khan vote to try and see if I could find any clues there. Didn't really get very far. I mean, basically, I just think a lot of these councils are just going to stay where they are, really. I do think Labour could win Wandsworth and Barnet. Whether they're going to spin
1-3 in Wandsworth.
Yeah, I mean, whether they're going to really spend a lot of time saying, you know, wow, we won Wandsworth and Barnet. There's an argument for saying that Labour need to not be saying that. They need to be telling people that they're not, you know, Islington in a suit or whatever Boris Johnson keeps calling Keir Starmer. They need to try and say that they can win elections around the country and not keep going on about London. So even if they do win Wandsworth and Barnet, I think they'll make a big deal of Barnet because they want to try and grab it on about anti-Semitism whenever they can, and they'll try and tie that in because Barnet has a large Jewish population, and they'll try and say that, you know, that's the only reason they won it if they do win it. I think what they really need is some wins up north in the Red Wall, but when you actually look at it, there aren't really that many winnable places for them in the Red Wall on this round of elections.
I feel
go ahead, Bob.
I think I'll just say about it is, like, we are in a, take out the cities. I agree, the cities, they've gone because they switched to Labour ages ago. Those dynamics weren't in play. The rest of the country, the towns, the places that decide elections, there is a lot of polling evidence and wider sort of anecdotal things going on that shows that we are in a different situation nationally than we have been for 25 years. There's not been, you know, the other day, I saw that poll the other day, what would you prefer, a Labour government led by Keir Starmer, or a government led by Labour and Keir Starmer, or a government led by Tory and Boris Johnson? And it's 57-43 to Labour, right? They are in real trouble all over the place. People are sick of them. And it's the midterm, it's the classic case of the midterm process. And since they came to power in 2010, we haven't seen that. We haven't been in anything like this situation. And that's the kind of situation where we can all be underestimating what's happening. You know, going back to last year and the results last year, you know, Starmer absolutely screwed up the news cycle completely by trying to sack Angela Rayner. So no one really focused on the results coming on the Sunday. But some of those results, like Labour taking Chipping Norton, which would never have even been on anybody's radar. And there are going to be places like this all over the country, right, that maybe don't amount to that many seats, but they're shockers, right? And they, you know, again, these places the Liberals might win. And I think that is, you know, there is a lot of potential for that to be the story, that suddenly the Tories have just had a bad night everywhere and they're really down on national vote share, on projected national vote share. And the psophologist conclusions coming out of this will be they're losing. They're going to lose next time. That's where we are. They have to do something. Whereas that has never been, you know, even if you take those elections in 2018 where Labour did better, right? Nobody came out of that election saying, here is a clear signal that Labour are going to win the next election, right? I think we may well see that this weekend.
Did you see any value in I'm looking at the markets there, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have like, I don't know, about 20 priced up here, mainly Labour favourites for pretty much most of them anyway. The Lib Dems and some, you see the Conservatives are favourite in Westminster, for example. The Conservatives are favourite in Newcastle upon Lyme, marginal favourite. Conservatives are favourite in Hillington, but generally Labour favourites for most. So is there any value to be had, Paul?
Well, the ones I've got written down here, I think Labour will take Barnet. I think that, again, Neil mentioned the anti-Semitism thing. I've got a friend in Barnet, and we had this conversation 4 years ago. I backed the Tories there 4 years ago. It is different, and that is a seat that probably would have swung earlier without that particular issue.
How big is the Jewish population in Barnet, incidentally? It's not something I was aware of.
15%, but it's more than that. It's the fact that it's friends, neighbours. It's an issue in the local community, right? So it cuts through. But I do think that Barnet will go Labour. The two bits I've got actually here, I've got. By
the way, I think the Barnet, like the Jewish community thing, is slightly overdone. There's only 300,000 Jewish people in the country. Quite a lot of them live in Diane Abbott's constituency. Quite a lot of them live in Manchester Central, in Lucy, what's her name? Lucy Powell's constituency. So I think it's slightly overplayed. But I know that Labour are very keen to talk it up. They've invited members of the Israeli Labour Party over to help them run the campaign there. And the candidate, one of the main candidates there that they're really talking up is somebody that used to work for the Israeli embassy. So you know they're making a very big thing of it, and this is a real big kind of push from Keir Starmer to try and well, you know, just a tedious left bashing from him generally, really.
It is 15%. It is 15% apparently of Barnet, and generally as well. I mean, that North London Jewish population is pretty liberal. It's not. These are people who generally over the years have been Labour, so there is a potential swing there. But the bets I've got lined up here, Gosport, where Lib Dems are 11 to 10 favourite. Looking through those wards, it doesn't look. I think it's no overall control. 5 to 1 no overall control makes a lot of appeal there. I like no overall control in Maidstone, same reason, which is a mostly Tory Lib Dem switch. I would run a mile from backing Labour in Wandsworth and Westminster because we've heard all that before and they just don't win those places. But maybe they do. Maybe that's a shocking result. But
I actually thought the Tories might be a bet in Westminster actually at the odds on.
Why not? Yeah. I could see.
I thought it was very unlikely that Labour win in Westminster. I mean, I did quite a lot of door knocking in the city's constituency in the 2019 general election, and I think I went there 3 times early in the election, and I just thought this is a waste of time. They've got no chance of winning this. This is just not a Labour area. I think people have really talked them up there. It's definitely a Tory area, the Westminster constituency.
Yeah, it's very divided. It's a very divided constituency.
Yeah, there's a couple of big estates in Pimlico, isn't there? And that's basically it. Really.
Right, and I don't think we've got any betting on those seats, but I'll tell you what I've also really got an eye on is Scotland. Because I think we've discussed this before. I mean, the unionist vote in Scotland is not especially partisan at Tory or Labour. And a lot of what's going on there is who's got the momentum, who's going to be best placed to beat the SNP, etc. Right? Now, the SNP aren't having a great time of it. The Tories certainly not having a great time of it. And this is really something that would be noticeable. If Labour can move into a clear second and clearly win the unionist vote, that has quite significant implications for Westminster, because there are probably 15, 20 seats potentially in range somewhere for Labour that, it could change quite dramatically, because if Labour were seen as the second party, the challenger to the SNP in those seats, you'd get a big swing from Tory voters.
Just let me quickly just come in on Gosport, because I have to say I agree with you a lot on that one. I spent hours looking the other day at Gosport, ridiculously. Basically, yeah, I know it's mental, isn't it? For a council, they have 8 Conservatives, 9 Liberal Democrats, and a Labour. And I thought to myself, well, the Lib Dems are going to have a good night, and the Tories are getting bashed up, generally around the country. This must be a place that's ripe for the Lib Dems. How can they be odds against? That was what I was thinking going in. So I started drilling deeper and looking at the individual constituencies, the individual wards within the constituency. And everyone's so entrenched. Like, they're either really safe Tory wards or they're really safe Lib Dem wards. And the one Labour ward is a really safe Labour ward. So unless something dramatic happens in Gosport and somebody goes and, wins one that they were just miles behind in last time, I don't see how the Lib Dems can really win it. They need to, they would need to poll just way better than they're polling nationally. I think the Lib Dems will have a good night, but I think having a good night will mean that they just hold on to all their seats there and come a bit closer in the ones that they don't win.
One. Yeah, maybe going one.
Yeah. I think you're right, Paul. I think it's a really big price, that. No, so that's a bet we can both agree on. There we are. Gosport, no overall control, and I think Star had quite a tasty price there. What was it? 5 to 1.
It's 5 to 1. It's 5 to 1. Yeah. So 5-1 on that. Good that we get agreement on something that isn't odds on as well. Decent price. William, who's
Well,
going
it's
to be the
hard
big
to
winner in
find
this
decent
election?
prices on this, isn't it? It's quite hard to find decent prices.
It's 4-11 and 2s, like, so it's not. But in fairness to the traders, this is it's not an easy thing to price.
It's really
William,
hard to price up. I agree. I think it's quite tough, but and they're all basically 2 or 3 horse races. And the odds-on favourite's going to win most of them.
William, do you expect much business over the next couple of days now?
I'm not sure. I'm genuinely not sure. I think that some punters will definitely see their opportunities, and I think it will be one of those events where people will see, I think, particular prices. Like, for example, they might think, I can't see Labour winning, say, Westminster, as we said, and think, well, I'll take 5-2 on the Tories and try to go for some fairly big stakes on singular outcomes. And the traders and us are going to have to do the best job possible of sort of playing the game in one way or another. I think we're likelier to see some individuals going for heavy hits rather than big floods of money, because I think if you are betting on the local elections, you're almost certainly the sort of person who knows electoral calculus. Or does your own forecasting, and you've probably got tabs open with like State of the Nation from the New Statesman on your laptop whenever you wake up in the morning. I think those sorts of people will have a go. But it's a fascinating sort of challenge, I think, for both punter and bookmaker, and we might see a couple get chinned, and sometimes it can just be luck. Did we lay the one that got chinned? Did we lay the one that went to plan? And whilst I think there are some possibly shaky-ish prices there, I think it will be hard work for both the punters and for us as well.
Do you agree with the lads in general that, like, even if it's a desperate election for the Conservatives, it doesn't really affect Boris?
Yes, I've come around to that. I've changed my mind on this, because I was of the opinion that this was his sort of last big moment of danger. I was of the opinion a while back, and I think I said so on a previous episode, that this was the last thing that could tipple him over the edge. This may be the combination of more fines or whatever, or something like that. I'm now of the opinion that for a few reasons they won't shift, I don't think. Primarily also because it's really hard for a set of local election results to be either so good or so bad that you have an immediate outcome from it, if that makes sense. And of course, the spin will be an overdrive.
Can I just say, I think this.
Go ahead, Paul.
On the
Sorry,
Boris,
Paul, I think this price has come in, but he's 4-7 not to be leader at the next election, which I still think is just, I can't see how he's leader.
Okay, no, yes, there's another bet I found on this as well, so I'll get to in a sec. First of all, like, I really do feel confident that he is on very borrowed time. It just gets worse and worse and worse. The news cycle is horrific. The Susanna Reid interview this morning, I thought that's the sort of thing that matters, because that's where the disengaged swing voters see him. They're just completely losing credibility. And even their hatchet jobs aren't working anymore, such as the Rayner business and Keir Starmer's Beergate or whatever. These things aren't working. And it is gradual, but the real tipping point is going to be these by-elections, right? These are the things that really demonstrate the country turning. And I think they are going to get thrashed in Wakefield. I think they're going to lose Tiverton. I think they may very well lose when it happens, Somerton and Frome. And they're the things that will finish him. Now, one bet that I really like, first of all, 7-5 to go this year. I love that. I think. I mean, also, I also read that story after story saying that the Graven pool will be so damning he will have to go. But it is not. This is not over. It's going to be grim. There's going to be pictures. There's going to be revelations in it. So I like the 7-5, but probably even better than that is 11-10 Sunak not being Chancellor on the 1st of January next year.
Because, that is better.
Yeah, because he could get sacked very easily.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, way the most likely reason he's not still in a job is that he gets sacked. And then you've got the double bubble. If Johnson goes, Sunak goes. Yeah, he must be the two things combined, which obviously he has to be a lot shorter than Johnson to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that. That's a very good spot.
Indeed. Just on Beergate, because I can't believe you used that. But actually, just to sort of emphasize Paul's point, YouGov asked back in January, do you think X meaning either Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer, generally did or didn't follow the lockdown rules? Nothing uber specific. It was 73% think Johnson didn't, 40% think Starmer did, to 28. They've re-polled that question, and there is basically no change. Like 70% think Johnson didn't. That's from 73 in January. Apologies, an early mistake. And 42% think Keir Starmer did. So all of those stories and all of that discourse hasn't really made a big dent in terms of the impression, which is that Johnson broke all the rules. Well, not really an impression, he did. And Starmer followed them as was set at the time. For what it's worth, I don't think he's handling Beergate very well. I think he should be far more. I think he should just be a bit more sort of ballsy and honest and say, no, the police haven't been in contact, and yes, X and Y did happen, but it's not really denting him. I think he's got other concern about. Sorry for that sidetrack, but I thought it was interesting that it's been looked at again.
This is an actual headline. I mean, this is the world we live in. There was no party. Keir Starmer insists Beergate event did not breach COVID rules, but refuses to offer any further details, including on claims of big curry delivery. What? Is this an actual thing?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm finding the Beergate thing slightly odd. I mean, just because, like, I don't really think it matters that much. And I think, I don't think the electorate really care that much about it. But I don't really understand how, when he's asked 4 or 5 times whether Durham police have been in touch with him, he can't just answer that. He stumbled through the interview, and then his press officer sent a clarification to journalists to say what, I can't remember whether the answer was they had contacted them or they hadn't contacted them, but to clarify whichever one it was after the interview. Well, why didn't he just answer the question in the interview? It can't be that difficult. The other thing is that if you're doing campaigning just before an election, and there's a group of you and you're working hard and you've been out all day campaigning since early in the morning, knocking on doors and delivering leaflets and whatever else he's doing, and you stopped to have food at 10 o'clock. He said, we stopped to have food and then we carried on working. Well, who are you contacting? Which voters are you contacting after 10 o'clock at night? Like, what work are you doing? I don't really quite understand that. Like, the types of campaigning that happen are delivering leaflets, knocking on people's doors, or ringing people up. Well, you're not doing any of those after 10 o'clock at night after you've had your food and your beer. You can just say we had a really long day and then we had a curry and all went to bed. It just doesn't. And also, why did they say that Angela Rayner wasn't there, and then afterwards say that she was there, and then somebody else said, oh, well, we were all busy, probably didn't really notice she was there. I was just like, what the hell is this? Like, just get your story straight. I have noticed that Labour have, very much Lotto, this particular version of Lotto, the leader of the opposition office, are very keen on focus groups. They haven't mentioned Partygate for 4 days now because they obviously feel like, and they've switched the cost of living crisis, which I think is correct. I think it cuts through much more with the public to talk about the cost of living crisis than to talk about parties. Like, a lot of people just don't really care about parties, and the kind of people that they want to win over don't really care about parties. The people that are really angry about parties have already made up their mind that they don't like the Tories. The people who are, swing Tory Labour voters, and there aren't really very many of those, they're much more likely to be impacted by the cost of living crisis. But I wonder whether the switch to not talking about Partygate shows that they are a bit sensitive about Beergate.
That's forward to you, Paul.
I don't think it's so much. They might be a bit, but I don't think it's so much. That's what Lisa and Andy said. This is not, cost of living plays a lot better, right? It's a far more, and all the polls show that is what people care about, right? But I mean, the thing is about Partygate, this is all about timing. The issue has massively hurt Boris Johnson because it's hurt his credibility, it's hurt his trustworthiness. There's a lot of people out there, particularly old people, I would say as well, who really were following the rules and, are far likelier to have lost a friend or, not been able to go to a funeral or something. But there's no need to keep pushing it. We know.
I was just going to quickly interrupt and say that. There's absolutely no need to keep pushing it. The people who care about it one way or the other have made their mind up. And unless there's more fines or you find out something else, you don't need to keep banging on about it.
I think they've been a bit
William, what else?
So just a bit lucky because they keep screwing up the Tories, don't they? I mean, the porn thing the other day. I mean, it's just a gift from heaven. Right.
I think porn's a bit hard. He just happened to be looking at a particular tractor website, and we've all been there.
That's right. Who am I?
William, what else have we got coming up?
So keep an eye on this space for whatever happens in terms of local elections markets, and also on the evening of the local elections, or possibly the day after, there might well be a special. You might even see us on the very night. We're hoping, I think, to get something together where possibly the four of us do a little bit of live stream, possibly on the night, and we'll just see how it goes, and we'll play it as we find it, because of course there will be election coverage throughout the night, and I'll hopefully have more for you and all of the viewers and listeners very soon on that front. Then after this, we're looking at some by-elections, of course. Indeed, Wakefield is now confirmed. It's confirmed as a by-election. The official resignation has taken place as we've been speaking, just in the last few moments. So we got, I think it's 2 or 3 by-elections now. Tiverton obviously is going to take place some point June and July. Tories are 13-8 second favourites. Then we've got the Lib Dems in it freeze on to overturn the 20,000 majority, which is just now seen as a matter of fact sort of thing by the market, which I think is not something people stop to think about really. The fact that Lib Dems are going off really short prices for majorities you wouldn't normally give an opposition party a hope of overturning. And then looking ahead to Australia and possibly French legislative elections, if we can get a mark of them. I'd like to have a look at that. And of course, Northern Ireland, which we got most seats marked on the site for.
But not the next countdown presenter.
We do have the next countdown presenter. It's Osman 4-1 and Murray 6-1, top 2 in. But we got a pretty full market. Stephen Magan 8, Ramesh Ranganathan, Ranganathan is it? 10s. Rich Dayarde 10s. Susan Calman also 10s. If you want Jeremy Vine, he's 12s, and he's 12s bar. So we got a pretty packed market for next countdown presenter, with Richard Osman currently leading. If you want anybody added, mind we have a huge list. Then do just give us a shout.
It's filmed up in Yorkshire, isn't it? I think is it filmed in Leeds or something? I mean, you should put Rishi Sunak in. I think he might need a job.
On that note, that was the polling station, and if you are getting involved in the elections, do enjoy your day out, and hopefully you get a 5-1 winner from our podcast today. We'll talk to you next week.